Welcome everyone to the 25-hour chakra teacher training course with me, Adam. I am so happy that you are here. So the way that this will work, we are going to go on a deep dive. I will lecture on each chakra, and as we go through the chakra, we will talk about different postures, different mudras that we can do, and we'll practice them as we go through. And then at the end of the chakra session, I'll open it up for some Q&A. Have fun, be open to this. The whole reason why I wanted to do this was because, I studied the chakras traditionally more in the yogic concept or tradition for several years, and it made sense, but there was always a little bit where it was very abstract. And then when my wife went through her naturopathy degree in Canada back in 2014, I think she started, or 15, it opened up the doorway to actually looking at what are the real physical, applications to the chakras. Because if we have chakras and they are the most subtle form of energy, and then everything else is a more gross manifestation of the chakras, anytime we have organs that are out of balance, or we have things that start to go wrong with the physical body, we have a map where we can actually start to use specific practices and postures to help address these different either blockages, and sometimes it's deeper than that. Sometimes it's areas that really need healing. So before we start, I would love to kind of just acknowledge all of the teachers that I have, let's say, gathered inspiration from for this training. Caroline Mace is one of them, a gentleman
Mm,
called,
mm.
oh, a gentleman called um, Dr. Oh my gosh, I'm having a name blank. He's coming. He's coming. It's in French. It's one of my wife's French teachers, but he's like a medical intuitive. It will come back to me. Um, Ambika Wouters on her work on the chakras and the tradition of my meditation teacher, Pakmurta Ada in Bali. Okay. Isn't that funny when you have a mind blank? There's a space now, and I'm like, what's his name?
David Goulet.
No, it's not David. David's one of them. Yeah, David Goulet's one as well.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
okay. Anyway, it will come back to me. So, everyone, without further ado, the best thing we can do to start off this practice is meditate. Yeah, because we are all in different parts of the world. Let's drop in and have a short meditation practice, and hopefully, I will remember the name of my teacher. I've got his book. I'm like, where is it? But it's all in French. Anyway, it's going to come back. I know it is. Dr. Jacques Martel. That's it. Yeah, Dr. Jacques Martel. It's a very underground kind of teacher. If you do speak French, it was all Quebec was doctor that had like a big spiritual awakening. And I mean, like any single micro thing that you have go wrong with the body, he's paired it so well with emotions. And basically, my goal is to try to compress and download all of this into a concise manual and teaching so that you can help yourself and help other people through all of these different modalities. Okay. And then all of the different tools that I've learned from my yoga teachers, meditation teachers with mudras and things that I've experienced as well. So let's jump into practice. We'll do a short meditation and then I'll open up lecture. Okay. Okay. So go ahead and take your chosen meditation posture. Let your body relax into the space that you're sitting in. And with the eyes closed, just become aware of sound. Listen without reacting to what you hear. And as you bring your attention back home to your body, can you kind of sense or feel a vibrational field around the body? Can you sense that your body is transmitting energy? You can feel, we do a lot of work on the heart in the meditations that we do. It's very easy to actually feel the heart field. But our whole nervous system, from the brain all throughout the body, is pulsing and vibrating with this electric pulsing and vibrational field of energy. So can you feel this life force? Can you feel this vibration pulsing all around you, all within you? And I really want you to just become aware of the field of energy that your body is not just transmitting, but there is also a field of energy all around you. So we know that with our limited senses, humans can only pick up about 95 generously percent of all of the light and vibrational field that's actually all around us. And that 95% of the unseen is also moving within us. So can you just start to become aware of that field of energy that we can get a sense for, we can feel in some way, shape, or form? Might be a vibration, a pulsing, a light. And sitting right at the center of all of it, the anchor is our breath. And we really feel that miraculous flow of the breath as it draws this energy, different gases, in through the nose, down the windpipe, and into the spongy sacs of the lungs, and it distributes through the body. Remember, the breath really helps us to be anchored, to be rooted in the present moment. It helps us to sharpen our level of concentration so that we can train ourselves to be more one-pointed. And it also bridges the gap between us and the external world. The longer we meditate on the breath, we start to really embody and know that there is no separation between us and the external world. And the breath bridges that gap as we take that invisible field in and give it back. So just anchor yourself on your breath for a few more moments, sensing and feeling the aliveness of your body and the nervous system and the field of energy that that emits into the space that you're sitting in. Now, I would like you just to take a moment to really set your intention for this weekend and the training ahead. If there is any one particular energy center that you know you are working on or that you know needs a boost in some way, shape, or form, set your intention for that to really understand with the mind and with the felt sense experience of your body how to reset that, how to rebalance this center. Collectively, let's call forth all that is good, honest, true, pure, and beneficial for humanity within this training. And may we all serve. Remember, through our own internal journey of becoming whole, integrated, and healthy, that is how we actually affect the collective by being the change that we wish to see in the world. When you're ready, please join your hands together in front of your heart center. Seal the practice. Let me take a deep breath in. Exhale through the mouth. Let's chant the bija seed of Ah one time together. Big breath in. Ah. Softly rub your hands together. Cover your palms over your eyes. Block out all of the light as we open the eyes in darkness, feeling warmth, light, vibration, and this healing force flooding into the eyes. We then close the eyes, bring the hands down, join the palms in front of the heart, and then open the eyes to look at one still point. Lock your drishti on to that one stable focal point in front of you so that you come back into the space slowly. Our peripheral vision expanding, and then when you're ready, move the body as we open up practice. Okay. All right, everyone, take a moment to get your notepads, and we will jump in. Okay. And remember, any questions as we go along, you feel free to just raise a hand if you need to. All right, let's get my notes up. Okay, so the introduction. In this 25-hour training, the idea is that we are working to really explore the subtle energy body through the lens of yoga, meditation, embodiment, and nervous system regulation. I've really designed this to provide you with a grounded and experiential understanding of the chakra system as a map for self-awareness, healing, and transformation. This training bridges traditional yoga with modern understanding of the nervous system, embodiment practices, psychological insights. I really want to emphasize that the main goal of how I teach and how I approach the chakras is really to bring health and healing, because ultimately I think that's one of the key things that brings so many people into practice. Because, if you're a teacher or you are in the space, usually we get into yoga because we're not feeling that great, or someone has recommended it to us and it's made us realize that, there are things in our life that we can work on, and the journey doesn't stop. This is the thing that I would like to make everyone understand. It's like we might get to really profound states and experiences in our practice, but it's a continuation. It never really stops. Yeah, it's like that's why it's called a practice. It's our fall to, our go back, our safe space, our sanctuary to come to time and time again. Now, what is a chakra? This is the thing. And again, the pronunciation for everyone, a lot of people, especially French people, all French people call them chakras. And you hear a lot, like almost every time I see someone advertising a chakra course, they always pronounce it chakra, and it's cha, okay? It's a chakra. So how do we come up with all of this? How do we have these 7 chakras? What's the purpose? What's the meaning behind it? Where did it come from? What does it actually mean? I know some of you know bits of it, but the word chakra comes from the Sanskrit simple meaning wheel or disc. The idea is that certain points in the body act like spinning vortexes of energy and they're places where prana gather and move through us, shaping everything in our physical experience from our health, our emotional state, and our state of mind as well. That said, the Tidy Seven chakra system most people are familiar with isn't so ancient. The fixed truth has been handed down and unchanged for thousands of years about chakras. This is true. In this specific way that it's been interpreted, though, the seven chakra system is a fairly new one. Okay, but where did the idea of chakras actually come from? So I'm not sure how versed everyone is in yoga philosophy, but I'll try and just skim over it, not to go into too much detail. The earliest meditations and uses of the word chakra came in the Vedas. So the Vedas, there are three Vedas, and the Vedas are the oldest spiritual texts we have from pre-India. It's like, before India was even a country, and they're the earliest texts. Then they didn't really describe the chakras as so much energy centers. They really described them more as just wheels or weapons within their way that they were describing. And within the Vedas, it's very it's not codified, but this is one thing I'd like to mention actually. So with all the spiritual literature, and this goes across every tradition, every country, everyone's different perspective. A lot of it is written in almost like poetry, and people think that it's codified. It's not really codified so much. It's more that we're trying to put language onto an experience that is beyond language, which is why you have things like Rumi and his poetry gets close to describing what that is, what they're trying to explain. And when we're trying to explain this state of what yoga is, because you got to remember, yoga and meditation are synonymous with each other, but yoga is a state. Yeah. Practice is a method to get to the state. Yeah. And we can talk about the state, we can describe the state, but nothing actually is the state, right? So if you were trying to explain to someone thousands of years ago what that state is and the different layers of it, that's what you would write it like, okay, in the Vedas. And later, so the texts that come after the Vedas are something called the Upanishads. And then the Upanishads really do actually start to talk about this idea of subtle energies in the body. And this is where we first have the introduction of the 72,000, sometimes 108,000 Nadi system, that huge energy pathway that runs through the body. Now, this is where it really started to begin to take shape. However, it was not so much the seven chakra system back then. The full-blown system that we know today, actually along this vertical axis of the spine, comes a lot later, because when we look at the Upanishads and the Buddhist texts, they really see the chakras. They use a lot of deity worship within the practices. So each chakra correlates to different deities. For me personally, it's not my speciality with this. Mine is really the physical location and the psychological and emotion. So how did we come up with seven? Where did that come from? So interestingly, not everyone agrees on seven. Yeah, different texts. Some describe 4, 5, 6. One of the teachers that my friend Clive mentioned earlier, he works on 9 chakra systems. And then if you go into Taoism, and one of my other teachers who I didn't mention, Master Mantak Chia, when you go into that system, you have chakras everywhere. It's not like there's just 5 or 6, there's multiple. And this spinning vortex, it's more like people will experience them in different ways and shapes and different fields as well. My experience of them personally is more like a pulsing ball or a sphere of energy when I connect to these. Now, a disc form is more, a disc is like a CD disc that kind of spins out. So the way that one of my teachers kind of explains it is that you have you have your seven chakras, then you have an eighth and a ninth. And the idea is that if we are all vibration and light, yeah. So if you break a human system down to the most subtle detail, we get down to atoms. I'm just speeding this process up for us, okay? An atom is 99.9% nothing. It's literally vibrating energy that also changes when we look at it. So the idea is that light from this universal intelligence that's all around us, that 95% that we can't see, hits this ninth chakra and flows down and then separates into that field and light spectrum of the rainbow, which is why we have the colors of the chakras. Now, the chakras, like a lot of people do not see the chakras in their specific colors. Often I'll hear people say, look, when I meditate on the heart, it's pink, and often it can be pink. So don't get stuck on the colors. But when we look at light spectrum, yeah, and how a rainbow actually comes into play when we have light hitting certain reflections on water, that creates this rainbow effect. So we are 60 to 70% water. So the idea is that when light is coming in through the crown or touching this light or water body, that is what creates the light spectrum or vibration colors of the chakras. Yeah. Now, does that make sense so far? And yeah. So when it kind of got more solidified onto the seven, it was more around. So also, just to come back to that before I move on, the seven chakra model that we recognize today is really got more defined and rooted in about the 8th and 12th century, and then it got further codified in Kundalini yoga. The version that spread into the Western world and largely became popular was through a writer, Theophilosopher writer, C.W. Leaderbird. And I don't really know much about his work, but that is what he based it on. Now, where that map came from is looking at the different nerve plexuses in the body. So I've got this picture in the manual, and let me put it in the chat so you can all see it and then get a visual about what I'm trying to explain to you. Let me see. Can I put pictures into a chat here? I think I can. No, I can't. See if you can see my screen. 1 second. Sorry, I'm not super savvy on Mac. Okay, I'm not going to waste time on this, but I'm going to explain it to you. And when you get the manual, you'll be able to see this super clearly, okay? All right, so what we have, if you look at your spinal cord, so this is very important to understand. You have the center of the nervous system is your brain, yeah? Then you have the spinal cord that runs down the spine, branches shoot out everywhere, and that is how we sense and perceive everything. This is how we receive information, which is why he thought this correlation would line up and make sense with nerve ganglia. So we have these big plexus of nerve ganglia, and they pretty much line up with the endocrine system and with the approximate location of most of the chakras. Now, one of the reasons why there was fewer chakras in the beginning is because when we look at more classical meditation, okay, there's really three main gates that we meditate in. And then it's like, what do I mean by a gate? So a gate for meditation, we have one main gate, which is the center of the brain or the third eye. We have the second meditation gate, which would be the heart center, and a third, which is the navel. Now, those are the two major, the three like super major energy vortexes that we use in meditation. Okay. Now, all of this lines up again, like I said, with the endocrine system and the nerve plexus. So we have right on we'll start at the base. So we have the cognogeal spinal ganglia and the pelvic plexus. And if you look in that root space of like your base of the spine and the coccyx and the anus sphincter, we have so much nerve endings there. And if a chakra is the most subtle form of energy, if that light is hitting there, and then the more gross aspect of that then would either, so there's different schools and thoughts of this. And my understanding is that if that's the most subtle form, it can definitely affect the nerve ganglia because remember, nerve sensing is really like electrical energy, but it doesn't just influence it. Some teachers say that this is actually the building blocks of life. This is how we actually started to get cells forming and how we get grosser, more functional anatomy. So you have right at the bottom this, then you move up to the sacral spinal ganglia, which is just like at the top of the bridge where the sacrum joins onto the lumbar spine. And these two lower chakras, which we're working on first, uh, I mean, all of them have their unique space in this, but the lower ones are often places people get blocked. Yeah, and we're going to cover a lot of this about how to hopefully unblock this. Next one up, you obviously have your solar plexus. Yeah, and that is a nerve, a plexus of nerves. And at the back, you'll have your lumbar spinal ganglion as well. And again, chakras are not in one location. It's a disc that affects everything on that plane. Okay, everything on that plane. Then you have up in the heart, you have your pulmonary plexus, the cardiac plexus, and the thoracic spinal ganglion. And it goes up even higher then to your thyroid plexus here. And obviously, for women, this is a very common one to have issues with. We'll talk about that a lot tomorrow and how to open that one. We have the cervical spinal ganglion and the superior cervical ganglion as well. And this goes all the way up then into the neck, into the throat and the midbrain. And then when you have all those master glands in the midbrain of the thyroid, parathyroid, and pituitary gland and pineal gland. So you can see how this was, this is how kind of a modern Westerner, a writer, would try to link and pair these together. And I've seen lots of people then pair it with the endocrine system as well. And we can separate all of this. And a lot of my Indian teachers and even one teacher I studied with, Rod Stryker, they're like, no, that they are separate. They might be separate, but we can't really separate anything. It's like when you really study with someone who knows anatomy, you know, we learn, you know, you have 206 bones in the body, 600 and something muscles, and we learn them all individually, but nothing functions on its own. You know, we literally use over 200 like different muscle groups just to take a single step. And it's the same with the energy body. We can't really separate any of this stuff, which is why it's all paired and linked together, which is why my wish and goal in this course is to kind of bring all this together so that you can understand it in a way that's actually functional, that actually works, that's encompassing everything. Okay. Okay, team. I hope we're all still here. Got it so far? Yeah. Okay, sweet. Um, so when I started to get really more into yin yoga about 10 years ago, I got really injured in a vinyasa class or a studio I was teaching at called Wanderlust. And we were teaching this insane vinyasa like flow. It was really creative. It was so much fun to be a part of. Like it was a real, it wasn't a cult, but the community there was solid. But the sequencing was just insane. And I got really, really injured. And it was so interesting for me because I got into yoga and it had healed all my injuries. And then I went so deep into the practice and then I got super injured within the practice. And then I started to study more yin yoga and more therapeutics, more meditation and um, yoga nidra. So it was a blessing. It was a blessing, but a painful one at the same time. And I came across the work of a gentleman called Paul Grilly, who's an amazing anatomy researcher. And he helped me explain or understand that there is a massive difference in people's bone structure and joint ranges of motion. And he's like, look, no amount of stretching is ever going to affect bone on bone. And it was kind of an epiphany because I'd been studying classical yoga and it was all about the shape, the look of the pose. And Paul's work was amazing. And one of his teachers, which he introduced me to, was Dr. Motoyama. Now, Dr. Motoyama was a Japanese researcher, and he invented a machine called the AMI device. So he built this, and it's it's a longish word, but the apparatus of meridian identification. So the meridians, there's 12 major meridians in the body. There is a lot more if you go deeper into it, but these 12 major meridians connect to the 12 major organs. And he was really interested in what are the correlations and crossovers and overlaps of the Chinese system and the yogic system. And he wanted to measure what these meridian channels were in the body, what were their function, and basically what they did through his device, they were able to the system behind it, they were passing small electric currents through points in the hands and the feet. Now, the device recorded various electrical readings and ran them through a computer, which spat out information interpretations on your meridian health, but not just meridian health, overall well-being, possible pathologies, and it could even suggest which acupuncture points needed attention. So on when was it? 2000 and it's gonna be 2002. There's a gentleman in Bali called Alex, who's like this really funny kind of mad Russian inventor, sorry, Ukraine. And he had one of these devices, but his one he developed with another company, and his company I think is called Seeds of Life. And basically he would strap up all your fingers, and I said this recently, but we'll talk about this, or we'll use this when we do the practices. But each one of your finger pads has over 3,000 sensors, sensory receptors. So he stuck all these different pads onto my fingers, and one on each foot on the K1 points, which is the kidney points at the bottom of the feet. And he could measure everything, like health of the chakra, percentage of the chakra, and it was fascinating. It's fascinating. It's a shame they didn't make more of these machines because they are so much fun to play with. So he wanted to also look at the chakras. So Motoyama went a step further with his AMI machine and also looked at the chakras. The idea was that unusual patterns in the electrical reading would point out the imbalances in specific chakras, linking the Chinese meridian system and the Indian body module through his measurements. And it worked. It's cited in Yin Yoga teachings with Paul and a couple of my other teachers. And this is why I just want to make you aware that chakras are real, like the energy vortexes there are real. And for those of us who have never experienced any of the more esoteric vibrations or fields of pooling or spiraling, just see it as the nerve ganglion and the different nerve plexuses that formulate around these centers. And then on the grosser level, think about the chakras as the organs that are related to this, which we'll tap into now. Okay, so let's jump into the chakras. So we are going to look at the 7 chakras because they make sense, and you can add more. You can add way more if you want to, but for this training, we're going to look at the 7. Any questions so far? Okay. Again, if any specific thing comes up where you're like, oh, I really want to know, just feel free. Okay, feel free. This is the beauty about us being in a live format like this. So we have base chakra. I'm going to start at the bottom and work our way up. Our base chakra or root chakra is called Muladhara. Muladhara is the foundation of embodiment. It is the chakra of survival and stability. Now, Muladhara, the root, the energetical function of our human system. Again, I'll say that again. It is the energetical foundation of our human system. It's located at the base of the spine, at the coccyx, and it governs survival, physical embodiment, stability, and our relationship to material existence. In classical Hatha Yoga, Muladhara is the seat of the dormant Kundalini Shakti and is often represented by a coiled up snake. And it points to where our consciousness becomes grounded in the physical form. Muladhara establishes our sense of safety, belonging, connection to life itself. It provides the base upon which all higher psychological and spiritual development rests. When this foundation is unstable, the nervous system remains unsettled and high states of awareness cannot be integrated in a healthy way. The name Muladhara comes from the Sanskrit word mula, meaning root, and adhara, meaning support or foundation. Again, I cannot emphasize how important this one is, because remember, we just said it is hard for us to access higher states of awareness and it cannot be integrated in a healthy way. This is one of the reasons why we have so many spiritual teachers, in my opinion, having all these crazy things happen where you're like, oh, another spiritual teacher who's gone out on, come out in the Epstein files or whatever it is, it just keeps happening all the time. You're like, how is this happening? Because it's like whenever a teacher, I think, gets too elevated in their realm of consciousness and it's not anchored or grounded into this actual physical world. And this is always the hardest thing on the spiritual path, honestly, is to have, one foot in the our practice in this world of like, or not in this world, in that spiritual dimension, living from truth and higher self and non-duality. Yeah, because that's what we do when we go into this space where it's like everything is one, but then also coming into this physical world and being like, well, I got relationships, I got family, you've got bills to pay, you have a life to live, you got relationships, life is messy, people are living in a world of separation. So how do we integrate these two things? Yeah, and I feel like that's the missing piece when a lot of like, and this stuff takes time, and that's why I said it's a constant practice, and it's important to stay humble on the path. Because even when I look back on my journey, like I had years of traveling around the world just being out in the cosmos, like just literally just not really in this world. But then it's like, well, you have real commitments and life happens. You can stay there. Like I know lots of people that stay there, but that's where the imbalance happens because for me, it's like, yes, we are all spiritual beings, but we're having a human experience. The whole point of us being here is to have a human experience. I could talk about that for a long time, but anyway, let's keep going. Okay, Muladhara is quite literally the root support of our human experience. Now, I'm going to talk about this a little bit, and it's not the main focus of the training, but I learned a lot about the Vayu system with Rod Stryker and some of my time at the practice in Bali. But the energetical connection in the Vayu system is Apana Vayu. Now, I've explained this before. I'll explain it again now. This is not so much in the manual. I haven't drawn a map, but I can if you want me to. We have 5 main Vayus. So the word Vayu means wind. Now, I give this analogy, like I'm looking outside and I can see things blowing in the wind. And I know there's wind there, but I cannot see the wind. I can't see that wind element. Is it there? Yes. So in the energetical model of the spiritual body or energy body, we have the most subtle form of energy would be a chakra. Yeah. The most subtle form of vibration moving that we have access to is chakras. The more gross on top of that is a vayu. Now, the Hindu tradition says that there are 5 wind energies in the body. Okay. Now, the first one we're going to look at, which is connected to the lower 2 chakras, is Apana Vayu. It is a grounding force, and it really helps to, like Muladhara governs Apana. So it's a downward moving force that's responsible for all elimination. So if you look at that whole region of the lower 2 chakras, a lot of the organs, and especially the base, is connected to elimination. Yeah, so that's apana, moving out. Um, think about this word of apana as waste removal or detoxifying. So all of the organs in our root, you know, your bowel, your bladder, gas coming out, all of these things, it's a downwards moving force of energy. And um, so what the kind of understanding behind the practices that we do when we want to work on the chakras, we obviously have to work on the physical parts of the body that are connected to the region of the chakra. But the let's say hmm, the evolution of practice is physical organs. Then we go into energetical, which would be apana. And then we go into the chakra system, which goes into the more deeper layer of healing. Now, um, why why do we use the physical first? Because it's the most gross. It has the most tangible that we can touch and feel. Yeah. And what often happens is, so when we experience a trauma, this is one way to explain how trauma breaks off into these energy centers. Okay. When we experience some trauma, and we've all had trauma, when it's too intense for our psyche or for our mind to be able to handle, like when it's the human brain, I think, stops developing at 20, either 22 or 25. So you got to think when you experience situations or traumas in your teens or early childhood, we don't have the capacity to actually be able to handle a lot of these things. And depending on the trauma, depending on which energy it might be in, there's a piece of the there's a piece of us almost breaks off, and because it can't handle what the experience, it can't verbalize it, it can't intellectualize it, and it breaks off. And when it breaks off, this is where it goes off into the subtle energy body. And that's where we get blockages as we get older, when people like, have this, chronic lower back pain for 20 years, or I have something wrong with my thyroid. And it's like all of these things, it can often be traced back to the trauma, to a part of ourself being excluded or broken off, suppressed or put away to be able to function. Yeah, because the trauma was so intense that we needed to do that just to be able to survive. And this is what we want to do now, is figure out, okay, how can we integrate that part back into ourselves? Because we all have different parts. Parts are a normal part of psychology. There's um, what's the psychologist? David Schwartz, and he talks about different parts of our human psychology when he's treating patients. So it's a normal function and part of our being. Okay, so let's keep going and we'll see if we can figure out where we might have had these break off. And almost everybody that I've ever worked with, and I've worked literally now with thousands of people, and almost everybody has to work on the root and chakra number 2 that we're going to work on in a bit, because we all have some things that need to be fixed down here. Okay. All right. So apana regulates elimination, waste, reproductive function. Also, as well, you'll notice a lot of overlap and correlation between chakra 1 and 2. Remember, just after, was it last month, I did the chakras in pairs because they're so close that they often have overlaps. And to balance one and move into the other, sometimes there's going back and forth. So organs sometimes overlap, but energetics sometimes overlap as well. So reproductive organs will be 1 and 2. Okay. Rooting energy into the body, physical stability and grounding, energetic detoxification, psychological release of fears and insecurity. You can also visualize apana as a blue downward facing triangle. Yeah, that's often how it's depicted in the yogic tradition. So it's a downwards moving energy, releasing, letting go, stabilizing into the ground, the flow from the pelvic organs through the legs and out through the feet. Yeah. This is why grounding is so important as well. Yeah, like literally standing out in nature with your feet on the grass, because that is a big discharge of energy and it helps to ground Apana and anchor us into the earth. Like I went out the other day and took my shoes and socks off, and I was like, oh my God, I could not remember how long it had been since I put my feet on the ground because it's winter. Now, you got to look at all like yoga practice has evolved. Yogis were not on Lululemon mats. They were out in nature practicing on rocks, practicing on, solid mud floors. It was deeply connecting to nature. Yeah. So as much as you can, your yoga practice can be literally taking your shoes off and standing in Tadasana and just standing there for 5 minutes and breathing. That will give you such a discharge and a connection to Apana and Muladhara. So think of the organs and the structures associated with Muladhara. You have colon, rectum, bladder, pelvic floor, lower digestive tract. Many of these involve expelling, releasing, pooping, peeing, menstrual cycle, sexual fluids, and this downward moving, cleansing flow is a direct expression of Apana. As Apana continues its downward path through the legs and out the feet, the legs become conduits for discharging and grounding, allowing the body to continually release what no longer serves. When Apana flows freely, we experience stability, emotional groundedness, and physical vitality. The downward moving current of energy supports the body's natural processes of elimination, release, governing functions such as digestive, urination, menstruation, and the removal of waste in the body. On an energetic and psychological level, Apana also is the ability to release and let go of emotions and mental imprints and impressions. Just as the body eliminates physical waste, the remaining health, eliminates physical waste to remain healthy. The mind must also be able to let go of past events, emotional residue, and the accumulated psychological tension. So this is a huge one, okay? Who here replays negative conversations in their mind? Everyone, right? You have a challenging situation at work, you have an argument with your partner, your family member says something to you that triggers you, or you have like a shitty text exchange with someone, and it's on replay mode. It's on replay mode, yeah, because it is attacking survival instincts. Remember, it's all about survival. This is our physical grounding. And again, it's not just the physical level, but psychological and emotional. So when Apana is flowing healthily, it's much easier for us to be able to have these kind of challenging conversations, have these negative, perceived negative experiences, but also just not hang on to them. And also not hang on to the positive things. One of the obstacles on the path is actually chasing bliss and always trying to be in this like super positive state all the time, because even that is not, it's not sustainable. I saw it's not sustainable to be happy and positive and blissed out all the time. It's fake. Like you just like there's very few people that I think actually maintain that. I have a question from Bakari. So what do I mean by gross? In what context was gross? Is it when I was talking about the organs or the gross energy? I'll loop back to that, Clive, anyway. Does so when I say gross being organs and the physical aspects of the chakras. So the gross energy would be so the subtle energy chakras, more gross or more dense would be the wind elements. And then on top of that, then we have organs, the rectum, the colon, the bladder, all of these things, then that becomes the more gross aspect of the chakra. Okay. When Apana is balanced, a person tends to feel grounded, steady, and emotionally resilient. There is a natural ability to process life experiences and allow them to move through awareness without excessive clinging or resistance. Difficult emotions can be felt, acknowledged, and eventually be released. When apana is disturbed or weakened, however, this capacity to release becomes compromised. It may manifest as physical digestion disturbances, elimination disorders, or generally nervous system dysregulation. Yeah. On the psychological and emotional level, it can appear as fear, anxiety, instability, and the inability to let go of experiences. Let's just sit with that for a moment, because I think we've all gone through that at some point in our life, right? We've all had that, time in our life where we've had those symptoms and emotional things pop up. And wouldn't it be great if we could just be like, oh yeah, my apana's off and my system is off there. I know how to balance it. I just need to work on my root. I'm ungrounded at the moment, which is why there's too much mental activity. I'm ungrounded. I'm ungrounded from the physical form. One of the first things naturopathy, naturopathy is like a holistic version of being a doctor. And the first thing that they look at is, well, if anyone comes into their field, the most important question they ask is, how is elimination? Like, is the digestive tract working properly? Are they going to the bathroom regularly? Because that blockage builds up so much toxin and tensions. And it's amazing how many people are blocked there, actually. It's phenomenal. So yeah, the ability for us to release and let go is so, so, so important. Okay. Okay, let's continue. Disturbed base chakra or apana, often struggling to release past conversations, conflicts, and emotional wounds. They may rely or replay situations repeatedly in the mind, holding on to memories long after the events have passed. In some cases, this attachment is not limited to negative experiences. Many people cling on to the positive experiences and they attempt to recreate and hold on to something that is already complete and a natural cycle. This happens all the time. If I ever go back to Wales and bump into any of my old friends, all they want to do is go to the pub and get drunk and talk about the good old days. And it's cute, but I'm like, create the good old days now, make new experiences now. Like, the past is dead. It's beautiful. It's like that nostalgia. It's like, oh, that's great. But life goes on and there's so many amazing things happening now. So make sure that you create new memories. Okay. This tendency of holding, grasping, and resisting the natural movement of life can become one primary factor that keeps individuals feeling stuck, both in their personal lives and in their spiritual practice. From a yoga perspective, growth requires continuous process of experiencing, digesting, and releasing. This is why I feel it's very healthy to move through different traditions and practices and not get too stuck on one tradition, because there's so many things to learn and we have access to all of them. I definitely believe in going deep into them, but you can also feel sometimes when you've gone into a certain style of practice, whether it's, vinyasa yoga, or, you've been studying with a teacher for a long time, and there's just a moment where you hit a plateau and it's like, it's time to move on. Yeah, it's time to just experience something new, because you can feel there's a sense where you're not expanding anymore. Yeah, and then it's time to just move on. Life itself can be understood as a continual flow of these experiences. When apana functions harmoniously, we develop the ability to participate fully in life while allowing each experience to complete itself and then dissolve. That's why the teachings of, just mindfulness, breath awareness is so perfect, because it teaches us anicca. Every single moment is impermanent. Every breath is changing. Every moment's unique. That's why it's so powerful to just do simple breath awareness practice, because it brings you back to that over and over again. With the Hatha Yoga practice, techniques such as Mula Bandha are understood to regulate, strengthen this energetical current by engaging the pelvic floor, more specifically the perineum, The lower abdomen, Mula Bandha, helps to direct this apana and create a sense of grounded and containment in the body. As the body becomes more stable and rooted, the mind naturally begins to settle and support itself. So, Mula Bandha practice is done in a few different ways. Okay. Now, there is a very specific practice where in some asana, we practice on lifting the root. So you imagine that's your pelvis. Yeah. At the front, you have your sex organs. At the back, you'd have your anus. And in the middle, we want to start to lift up this area. So when we're doing certain asana, we want to lift this area to actually contain and stop energy from leaking out at certain practices. Now, most people down there are completely numb. There is no activity and there's very little awareness there. So we've been going for almost an hour. So what we're going to do is just do a very short practice of lifting and let's say engaging and contracting the center. And then we'll get back into it. So what I'd like everyone to do is just stand up and stretch out because we've been sitting for a moment. I just want you to do a couple of lateral stretches. Reach up to the sky, stretch out your whole body, take some movements, do whatever you need to for 30 seconds, stretch out your spine. And we're going to go through a very short Mula Bandha practice. Okay. So let's play with the contraction because this will help us when we go to separate as well, when we go into chakra 2. But let's focus on Mula Bandha now. Now, there's a very subtle form of Mula Bandha. And this form of Mula Bandha, the more subtle variation which we're going to do, when we close the eyes, I'm just going to ask you to look at the tip of the nose, and I want you to breathe out for as long as you can and see if you can feel a lifting of just the middle of that pelvic floor space that we were looking at. So choose your chosen meditation posture. You can either keep your eyes open or closed. Look at the tip of the nose and breathe out completely. Now breathe out so much that you feel the pelvic floor diaphragm slightly lift. Inhale, relax it. Exhale, go again. Breathe all the way out. Good. We'll do this several more times. If you're not feeling anything, at the very end of your breath out, begin to just see if you can lift your pelvic floor slightly. Even if you lift the whole thing, see if you can just feel a lifting or a contracting in the pelvic floor there. Going. There's a moment where, as you breathe out completely, the diaphragm will lift and that will draw in the abdominal cavity. And there are attachments where it goes all the way down into the pelvic floor. And you can just sense this slight lifting, raising, of the pelvic floor, especially the space in the middle. Keep looking at the tip of the nose. Good. Last two. Now release the practice, and I just want you to meditate and feel and sense the energy at the base of the pelvis, the root of the spine. See if you can feel this downward moving energy of Apana just flowing freely, energy moving down. Really connect to the surface that you're sitting on. And see if you can invoke that feeling of being grounded, anchored, and really stable in your body. Take a moment to slowly come back. Close this practice off in your unique way. And then slowly come back around. You have any questions, let me know. Take 30 seconds to a minute to move around if you need to. But, really Mula Bandha practice and just practicing this very slow breathing with extended breaths out. So whenever you make your breath out longer, or what are we doing? We are removing more waste. We are exhaling. We're getting rid of more of this Apana energy. Now, just placing your attention and awareness there, you can start to feel that subtle lift. Now, most of the time that never ever gets activated, which is why one of the reasons the root gets cut off. Um, so I would highly recommend if you ever know that you are in a moment where, especially if you're working, you're in the corporate space, so you're having to deal with people that necessarily wouldn't you wouldn't choose to spend time with. Doing some Mula Bandha practice when you come home is a great way just to be like, okay, it's like super grounding for you just to be like, okay, let's just play with some lifting and contracting. And you can do it with the full pelvic floor as well. It doesn't have to be super subtle. You can actually play with like contracting and lifting the whole thing, which will work a little bit later on. But I just wanted you to do the subtle form first to see if you got it, and then we'll play with the big gross one. Yeah. Um, and that can be a really nice way to practice as well. If you're teaching, the thing is, it's easier to do the gross one if you're teaching because more people can feel that, if they actually fully contract. Usually when we do the subtle form of Mula Bandha, which is why it's not taught usually in classes, you have to have a certain level of internal metacognition awareness of being able to scan internally and feel to be able to access that. Because most people, honestly, are like kind of numb from here down, or at least as they get lower down in the lower pelvis, it's a bit of numbness there. So I want to go through the reason why that root is a little bit numb, and you'll understand as we go through the physical structure and the support of what that is. So I'm going to repeat a few of these again, but you'll know it, but this one has a couple more. So we have the coccyx, sacrum, the pelvic floor, legs and feet. It's actually connected. One of my teachers, Caroline May, said that the root is actually connected to the whole skeletal system. The rectus, rectum, anus, large intestine, because that's the major one for elimination, lower spine, the adrenal glands for stress response, and even our immune system function. Yeah. And circulatory support for the body, for the lower body. So why does it affect the adrenals? Yeah. Why does it affect stress and cortisol? Yeah. Because really, it's so connected to fight flight, to our cortisol production and survival instincts. So whenever we feel threatened, whenever we have that perception of triggering our survivals, we basically will start to trigger fight flight, which is why root chakra is also connected. So the adrenal glands are also located at chakra 3. And chakra 3 is obviously your power chakra. But if your root is not stable, like if you're not feeling calm, grounded, and stable where you are, you're never going to feel balanced. You're never going to be in your power. Yeah. It's always going to be out of balance if your root's not in balance, because if you're not feeling the stability, you're going to be in fight flight. And that fight flight creates chemical stresses in the system, which is why it's so connected to that fight flight. Long term, that is horrendous for the body. Okay, your body does not want to be in fight flight. It's good for it to be in fight flight and then come down quickly. But what generally happens is people are in fight flight and they stay in fight flight and they just spend their whole day in, basically low to high levels of stress all day. And this is one of the most important things about learning the downward moving force of Apana and learning how to ground your energy body through the root chakra so that you can take yourself out of stress. Okay, will make sense? Yeah. So in the yogic tradition, the pelvic floor acts as a physical gateway of pranic containment, holding and directing the downward currents of Apana. As we use our feet and legs, Apana can travel downwards. The legs are key extensions of the root chakra. They help to conduct prana down into the ground. They support the upright posture of the spine's integrity. So any like any imbalance that you have within your legs and feet, your knees, has to be addressed. This is the idea about, like, if you actually look at what yoga is designed for, yoga is designed to remove the physical blockages in the body. Yep. Those physical blockages can be primarily the physical asana practice was addressed to correct bad posture, yeah, and to open up different areas of the body. So, because when the legs are misaligned and we can't ground, we're unstable. And it's so important why standing poses, grounding, using your legs to do certain squats are so important. Okay, we covered the adrenal response. So these are the common physical imbalances that you find. So if you have any of these, or you know anyone that's got them, and if you have any students that have this, this is where root imbalances show up. So the imbalances, and again, this is a mixture of my teacher, Caroline Mace, a little bit of Ambika Wouters and some of her work, and some of Dr. Jacques Martel. So the imbalances, the root level, may express themselves as lower back pain. Now, at some point in people's lives, I think it's like 80% of all people at some point will experience chronic lower back pain for a period of time. Sciatica, varicose veins, colon or rectal disorders, immune system weakness, chronic fatigue, depression, and structural instability. From the yogic view, such conditions reflect disturbances in one's energy foundation. Now, the psychological and emotional dimension of this, Mula Bandha governs our fundamental psychology of human life. So it's, again, I'm just going to go over these again. Survival and security, our trust in life. Yeah, so think about, this is one of the reasons why, I don't know, has anyone ever experienced financial loss, or like they've lost a job and they throw their back out? It happens so often, especially with men, but I've seen it happen with so many people. When they have survival or insecurity issues happen, they usually block their back. Something will physically go wrong. Trusting in life, having your ability to provide for oneself. This is all root chakra, psychological and emotional dimensions. Physical safety, your home and shelter, financial stability, a sense of belonging, connection to family and tribe, and relationship to structure and order. Okay, these are big. I could talk about for hours about all of these, but that sense of belonging is one of the ones that's quite tricky, because when we start to practice yoga and meditation, we essentially start to wake up. And it's like, well, wake up from what? Because, I got my meditation project. It's like, Awakening, the Academy of Awakening. And I brought my cousin into it. And the first thing he said to me was like, well, what's awakening? Which is a beautiful question, because I was like, it's so, all this stuff is so new to him. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great question. Awakening is waking up from the hypnosis. And you see it as soon as you start. It just starts with, okay, I'm going to go to yoga, and then you realize, wow, I'm not breathing, and second is I didn't even know where my mind is throughout the day. And when you start to keep going to yoga, like we've all experienced, you're like, oh my God, I start to become aware of my thoughts finally. And then you start to really become aware of patterns that you're doing unconsciously. And then you start to change those patterns. And that is waking up. It's waking up from being in the subconscious mind on repeat mode. And that is one of the hardest things, because I speak to a lot of my clients about this. The deeper into these practices you go, and the more internal work you do, the less sense of belonging you feel. Does anyone experience that? Like your old friends, your old lifestyle, your old routine, it's like, oh, it doesn't fit anymore. Yeah. Even sometimes the connection to our family, you can feel distant at some points in our relationship with family, because you watch the family pattern and you're like, I don't want to be a part of this family pattern anymore. This pattern that we've created is not healthy. Or there's a friendship in your life where you're like, that pattern's not healthy. There's a pattern that you've created as well in your personal energy structure where you're like, that is not healthy. Yeah, you might have allowed people to say things, talk to you, or treat you in a way that is disempowering to you. And that is where that relationship to structure and order becomes really important, especially if you are showing any of these signs of imbalance. Yeah, so that's really what you've got to look at. Yeah, and this is the point of this training, is for you to have all these different understandings, let's call them, or teachings about these different energy centers. And then you've got to look at, okay, how is this manifesting in my life? Where is it manifesting? You know, is it financial stability? Is it feeling safe? Like so many people do not feel safe in their own body. They don't feel comfortable in their own skin. And the idea is that when you have a clear understanding of the energy blockage that you're working on, then you start to work on it within the practice. And I'm going to show you, we're going to do a little bit of a practice on the root soon, and then we'll go into chakra 2. But when, this root is balanced, we feel groundedness, emotional stability, we feel confidence, we are resilient, we can set healthy boundaries, and we have a capacity to meet life's challenges. When imbalance shows up, we can get chronic fear or anxiety, insecurity, hypervigilancy, feeling unsupported, and a lack of belonging, and the scarcity mentality. Hmm. Okay, this part is very similar. So, early life experiences powerfully shape this center. Trauma, neglect, instability, lack of safety in childhood can disturb the development of the root chakra, and it can create chronic nervous system dysregulation. So again, if any of your clients come to you, or you yourself, or anyone you see has, chronic anxiety, disassociation from the body, hypervigilancy, survival fear, difficulty trusting life, and feeling unsafe in the world, you then have to look at, well, what was early childhood like for you? Okay, or them. Say it's a them, so it's not directed too much at you. Almost everyone that I work with, this is an area that we have to go back and look at, because as much as we all love our parents, most of them, and I'm not saying if you had really good healthy parents and they're loving and they're successful and they were always there for you and they gave you like lots of love, congratulations. But 95% of parents didn't do that. They did the best they could. I'm not bad mouthing them at all. They did the best they could, but it was a pretty shitty job. And we now are picking up the pieces of the puzzle because we have access to all these tools, and there's so many amazing psychologists out there and all these modalities weave together, and that's part of the journey of awakening and becoming conscious of why are there so many dysfunctional patterns within all of our families, and how can we correct them. Yeah, so I'm not it's this isn't about blame, because ultimately there is a moment on the path where we have to, and this is the most empowering thing you can do, is take 100% responsibility for everything. It's the most empowering thing you can ever do. Like I promise you, if you just say, you know what, I take responsibility 100% for everything, your job, your relationships, everything. And then it's not about blaming family members or our childhood experiences. We've then got to look at how do we reorientate ourselves within these structures, and how can we heal and fix these different imbalances that we've picked up and that we might have lived with for years and years and years and years. The good news is, like a lot of people say that, it takes years of therapy to undo all this stuff. It really doesn't. Like I promise you, it doesn't. If you go into these certain practices wholeheartedly and you work on this and you actually make a map of the different states that you're trying to experience with the practices that we're going to learn now, you can speed up your healing and transformation quite quickly. But you've got to constantly re-anchor it and re-anchor it and use it as a daily practice. So if you go into one of our practices that we're going to do now, and I'll implant this into the wording, and for those of you who are teachers or thinking about teaching, that is where you create themes for classes. So if I'm working on a root chakra theme, I bring in all of the elements of groundedness, emotional stability, feeling confident, feeling resilient, having healthy boundaries, feeling safe and secure in the body. And if you go into certain practices and you're directing this energy here and you're consciously healing these different blockages that have appeared, you can actually overcome these things quickly. Okay. It will take as long as you want it to take to heal. Like healing and transformation can literally happen like that if you make a decision to. But often we have to have the experience happen multiple times, and we go through this cycle of getting better and dropping back and going up and going back because there's just a gap in expanding identity. Okay. So what do I mean by expanding identity? So sometimes it's called identity shifting, but identity expansion is always happening to all of us, which is why some of these old relationships that I was talking about earlier, they feel old because we expand. And often, if you are on the path of growth and development, we are expanding all the time. So taking this course, for example, like in 1 week, you would have done 20 plus hours on understanding the subtle energy body plus physical practice. That's a huge freaking upgrade in a week. It is a huge upgrade. And then like that is an identity expansion because you're gathering this new information, you're physically practicing it. There is an expansion in your identity and of what you've taken on. And then it becomes like, oh, what else can I expand into? Oh, I can quit my job and do something else. I can start my company, or I can start to teach. I can start to expand into something else. And we've all done that. We've all had to expand into a new job. We've all had to expand into a new relationship. We've all had to expand into maybe being parents or moving to different houses. That's expanding your identity. Okay. And if you choose to expand your identity to work on your nervous system, to work on your root, and to work on your emotional stability, well, guess what? You can do that. You can do it. It's really easy. Okay. Do you have any questions? I can keep riffing for hours. So if you have any questions, just please ask. Okay. I want to make sure I'm not repeating too much of the stuff because the root is one of the biggest ones. Okay. It's one of the biggest energy centers. So healing our root really involves restoring this felt sense of safety in the body and re-establishing connection to the earth, to breathing, and to physical presence. Grounding practices like slow yoga, steady breath work, and embodied awareness are the key supports for regulating this system. The connection to earth and the physical reality. So Muladhara itself, the actual chakra, represents our connection to the earth, to physical embodiment, to nature itself, to our ancestry and lineage, family and community, culture, society, and structure. It governs our sense of being at home in the world. When we are disconnected from nature and our body awareness, our basic human needs for the root chakra are weakened, leading to instability and fragmentation. Through Muladhara, consciousness learns to fully inhabit physical existence rather than escaping it. And that's what like a lot of addiction is. It's escaping the physical embodiment. We're trying to get away from just sitting in that embodiment of whatever we're experiencing. One of the reasons silent meditations and going on retreat is so powerful because there's a moment where you just kind of sit in your own crap, for lack of a better word. You sit in the pain and suffering of just the mundane of who you are and the physical depths of the pain that you have accumulated over your life. Um, my teacher Jack Cornfield always says, a mind full of desires and a body full of pain, and that's what we start to realize when we sit and meditate, because all of that comes out, the pain in the body and the desires of the mind. Okay. So the root, so I brought in archetypes in this. Archetypes are a great way because um, archetypes are a great way to understand more generally if you're blocked in this area, because we can go through all the physical, psychological, mental, and emotional aspects of the chakra and how it governs. And then when we come into the archetypes, this is where you can just be like, straight away, I'm blocked here. I'm in the dysfunctional like mindset of the chakra or not. And it's very clear, okay? There's also, again, not to confuse everyone, but um, there's some overlap and there's some things that are, so some of these archetypes will be slightly different depending on which teacher you study with, but these ones work perfectly for me. So the dysfunctional, let's start with the functional. We'll start with a nice one. So archetypes, the functional, healthy archetype of your root is the mother. The dysfunctional is the victim. Okay. Now, what do I mean by that? What does a mother archetype represent to you? Like if you were going to envision or picture the perfect archetype of a mother, what would that be? Okay, so this archetype represents grounded presence and inner stability, capacity to create and sustain safety, both internally and externally, self-nourishment and the ability to meet basic needs, a strong sense of belonging and connection to life, practical responsibility and rooted in reality. This is what it is to actually be healthy and balanced in your root. So are you doing a good job of mothering yourself? Okay. So if you were a child, let's just say you were a child, do you look after yourself well? Like, do you really nurture yourself? Is your internal world one that feels safe, that feels secure, and that is a healthy space to be? Do you speak to yourself in this way that a loving mother would? That's when you know you're in the healthy archetype of the root chakra. Because and this is why I think everybody's not everybody, but most people's roots are off. Because every time I do a silent retreat, I said it a lot this month, but everybody's the download is the self-talk, how negative people's self-talk is. And that is a real sign that we're out of balance. If we can shift that internal voice, that internal part of us that is always kind of judging and analyzing, to be one that is a nurturing, gentle mother, you'll balance that chakra straight away. But most of us judge ourselves way too strongly. We criticize ourselves way too strongly. And instead of mothering ourselves, sometimes we're just pushing ourselves to do things. Okay. And there's a level of expectation on ourselves that's not real. We're trying to live up to a standard that's just impossible. Okay. The mother archetype reflects the individual who needs support, who feels supported by life, and in turn can create structure, stability, and contentment for themselves and others. Contentment for themselves and others. I'm going to read that again. Are you content? Are you content in your life? There is a trust in the body, in the environment, and in the continuity of life. Now, this is one of the things that media does really well, like now with World War III spilling over and everything. It's literally, they're just like, it's fear mongering. It's been around forever. You talk to anyone about history, it's always been like this. There's always the next big thing, the next big war. And it was funny how this happened just at the same time as the Epstein files came out, and all of a sudden we've just gone to war. And it's like, it's just it's one grip on fear tactics, and it keeps happening again and again and again, because when we're healthy, happy, whole, and integrated, we are the ones in power. It's when we play into the fear where we get disempowered. And there has to be a trust in life. Yeah, we have to, as stressful as life is, as how everything's getting more expensive, and I'm not even going to bore you with the things that the media are saying. It's real, it's happening, but it's always happened. So that's what we've got to tap into, is this feeling of trusting in life, of trusting in ourselves, and trusting that everything always continues. Like, it doesn't matter what happens with AI, even if robots take life, like everything will always continue. It always does. It just, like, life will go on. And we have got to train ourselves to trust in that process. Okay. Okay. The dysfunctional archetype, the victim, is one of my favorites. I'm not going to lie, I've spent some time in the victim. I think we all have. When Muladhara is imbalanced, the victim archetype can emerge, reflecting instability in one's sense of safety or survival. The patterns may represent chronic fear, insecurity, a sense of powerlessness or lack of control over life circumstances, dependence on external sources for validation, disconnection, from the physical body and reality, survival-based thinking dominated by perception and behavior. The victim archetype often organizes identity around threat, leading to a diminished sense of agency and trust in life. Again, this is most of society. Like, if you speak to most of society, it's like they're fully just in this role of survival thinking. And that is necessary. It's a part of life, but it's a small piece of life. That's why faith, devotion, spirituality, like when we get up to the higher point now, when we get up tomorrow and we go into Sahasrara, the crown and the root are so closely linked together that when we get this download and connection to the divine, it has to anchor in to the earth. Like, we have to get grounded and stable, because the victim archetype always will organize itself around threats. It will always just go into, what's the danger? Like, how can I empower? Like, how can I stay connected to this feeling of being unstable? Now, integration. Healing Muladhara involves establishing inner safety and foundational stability. That is reconnecting with the physical body, with presence, building consistent structures and routines that support that, developing self-resiliency and practical responsibility, cultivating a felt sense of trust and belonging in life. Through this process, one shifts from fear-based survival victim to a grounded, secure, supported mother. Okay, so having a routine is so important. Yeah, this is I cannot emphasize this enough. Having your personal practice and having a self-care routine, whatever that is, taking a bath, doing your thing, you have to do that. It is so important to your well-being. Like, it's almost impossible to be healthy if you don't have some form of routine where you are developing being responsible and some structures in your routine that make you trust in that sense of life. Now, Muladhara is not just about survival, it's also the foundation of our spiritual awakening. It is the seat of Kundalini Shakti and the grounded channel through which higher consciousness can be embodied. Now, like I said, crown and root are so closely linked, because you can be as spiritually enlightened as you like, but if you cannot ground that into the material world, it's pretty hard for you to live. Okay. The chakra teaches us that spiritual growth requires stability in the body, emotional groundedness, trust in existence, and integration of the physical life. Authentic spiritual development begins with full embodiment, not just with an attempt of transcending or bypassing the material world. I'm just going to give you a couple of questions to reflect on for a minute. We're coming to the end of the route, and then we're going to go into a little bit of a practice on the route. But just take 5 minutes to journal on these, okay? Am I or do I feel safe in existence, in the existence of life itself? Do I trust in life? Just write these down and then we'll take a 5-10 minute break so you can journal on these. Am I supported? And am I grounded in my body? And how do I feel in my body? Okay, I'm going to give everyone 10 minutes just to journal on that. And when we do that, I am just going to pause the recording and upload it ready for the people who are jumping in a bit later, okay? So I'm going to turn my camera and mic off, and then we'll open up and I'll finish off the route, and then we'll do Q&A in a couple of minutes, okay? We'll see you in a few minutes.